All right, if I had to start scratch as an SDR or as a rep taking over a new territory, knowing everything I know now, here's the exact roadmap I'd follow to crush quota, get promoted, and build a name for myself fast. My name's Connor Murray. I've been in enterprise software sales for over 7 years at 2 market-leading tech companies, and I'm now an enterprise account executive. I've also coached hundreds of SDRs to build their processes from the ground up and fast-track their results. And the biggest mistake I see SDRs make is jumping into the role without a clear plan in place, and they end up wasting months figuring things out the hard way. So in this video, I'm giving you the exact blueprint I wish I had when I started out that takes out the fluff and only focuses on what you actually need to know to get results quickly. So we're going to be covering how to build your prospecting system through a process I call coiling the spring, effective email prospecting and emails that actually get replies, how to cold call using the value statement framework, which is going to be a lot different than how sales enablement and gurus on LinkedIn have probably taught you, creating a productive daily schedule and a daily process for yourself, and then getting the most out of the sales tools at your disposal. So let's get into it. All right, first, building a prospecting system. This is where I recommend new reps, or if you're taking over a new territory, you spend the majority of your time at the outset, and it starts with a process I call coiling the spring. So coiling the spring, the first step is determining your ICPs, your ideal customer profiles, and buying triggers. So what does that look like for the company you work for and your value proposition based on what you sell? It could be a specific department, like a finance department or an HR department. It could be specific job titles within those departments. It could be a particular industry. Maybe it's contacts that work in the construction industry or within a certain geography. Whatever your value proposition is, identify those top ICPs and then strategically start building lists in your CRM with one or more of those buying triggers. So it could be by title, by industry. It could be VPs of finance that work in retail, VPs of finance that work in life science, or it could be a different industry like real estate owners that live in a specific state or business owners that live in a specific state. Whatever those triggers you identified are, start building out these lists because this is going to set the foundation for yourself and save you a whole lot of time and effort over the long term. Then what we're going to do is create cold call scripts and templates that are targeted for each of those lists. That's coming next in this video. We'll get into that. But why this is so important, it's because otherwise these tasks will cause you daily friction, slow you down, and kill your productivity. You'll see if you don't put this in place and you just wake up every day, 8 a.m., 8:30 to get your day started, you're like, who do I need to contact today? How do I pull that list together? What am I going to say to them? And next thing you know, it's 10:30, you have a meeting at 11 and you're only able to make like 15 calls. You want to have this stuff ready to go for yourself, teed up out of the gate. So this is what allows you to know what you're going to be doing each day rather than having to come up with what to do. It's such an important distinction, and it makes every day much easier and much more efficient. And the beauty is you can set the foundation for weeks or even months at a time if you do this correctly. And as you continue to build this out, you'll probably never need to make lists again. You're maybe just updating them and tweaking them as you get more information. An analogy I like to use is think about meal prep. If you've ever followed a workout routine, a lot of people think it's more efficient on, call it Sunday. You spend 3 or 4 hours, you get your food delivered, or you go to the grocery store, you cook all the meals, you package them up, so you don't need to think about any of that stuff for the next 7 days. It makes things easier, it actually saves you time, and it helps you be more productive and more efficient with your workout routine throughout the week. Same thing in sales, except lists don't go bad. Once you build these things, they're there. So the idea is rather than making this a daily activity you have to do each day, which causes friction, take the time to do the meal prep, do it up front so that you have this stuff laid out and the foundation set for yourself going forward. Some high level, I'm going to go in more detail on this later, but the sales tools and core capabilities you'll need. Don't get overstressed. A lot of companies or organizations have 8 different tools and it's like, how do I use this one and how does it integrate? Just break it down, first principles. What do you actually need in order to do this process of coiling the spring? One is you need an accurate B2B contact database, or accurate enough. No contact database is perfect as long as it's accurate enough and it has people's names, their titles, their email addresses, and or phone numbers. That's what you need to start. 2, you need the ability to filter those leads by the desired criteria you've identified up here. So either by job title, by industry, geography, some combination of those. You need to be able to filter them in that contact database. And then you need to be able to add these leads once you've filtered them to lists and contact them via the phone and email. If you can do those 3 basic things, you have enough to coil the spring. So don't ask, how do I use all these tools? Think, what do I need the tools to do for me? And these are the 3 basic things. Some examples, I get asked this a lot. There's Apollo.io, there's Lucia, LinkedIn Sales Nav is really good. I'll touch more on that later, but you should use the buyer persona functionality within LinkedIn Sales Nav, or Zoom Info. They also have one called Buyer Groups, I believe. But these are tools that you can use. They have good contact databases, or good enough. You can filter leads, and then you can add them to lists and contact them. Those are the only 3 things that you need. So throughout the first month, you want to do what management asks of you, obviously, from a KPI standpoint, make the dials, make the emails, but this is priority number 1 in my eyes, because it can set yourself up to be much more efficient throughout the rest of the year if you do it right. Now let's get into email prospecting. I'm going to try in one slide to communicate what works over email, and I think this is it. If you follow this, you're going to get off to a hot start over email. I like email too, because even if you're brand new, a lot of times it takes confidence, or it takes some time to get confidence and comfortable on the phones. Email, not the case. If you write good emails and get good emails in the hands of enough target personas, you will start to book meetings, even if you don't even totally know what you're doing yet. I think it's the quickest way to start getting results and some meetings on the board. So if I had to break it down, in order to write good emails, once you've coiled the spring, and now we're actually working on how do I create templates for these lists I've created, you want to follow the 3-body framework. I'm going to take you through an example of it in a second, but you answer 3 questions in 3 bodies of paragraph, generally about 5 to 6 sentences, and you tell them who you are, why you're reaching out to them specifically, and what you want. Why you're reaching out is generally what priorities and challenges you solve, the outcomes you deliver, and how you deliver those. And then what you want is generally time on their calendar. It's a psychological principle that the brain likes 3s. There's actually a principle you can look up called the rule of 3, or the principle of 3, or something like that, that's particularly effective in written word, that when you break out emails into 3s, they're more effective and more well received. Number 2 is replace all passive language with assumptive language. So you don't want to be, your email should imply that a meeting is going to be happening, that you're expecting this to happen, not asking if they're interested, if they're open to it. Those are examples of what I call passive language. I'll link to a video that goes way more in depth on this in email if you want to check that out next. But this is the biggest killer of emails, is passive language. Like, is this worth a chat? If you're open to it, I'd love to set up some time if possible. You want to use more assumptive language, like, I'm looking to set some time for an introduction. Such a small distinction, but probably the quickest and easiest way to start getting results over email. 3, you want to use a repeatable and easy to implement framework. When I take you through this example here, I've highlighted what I changed based on the title I'm reaching out to. But if we changed this title to say operations manager or a different title, we could keep this same framework and simply replace what's highlighted here with priorities and challenges that are more relevant to an operations manager or someone in finance or HR, whoever it is, because this is what helps you scale your email outbound efforts as well. 4, follow-ups, super important. Most people don't respond to your first email no matter how good it is. They respond, it's a follow-up that gets them to respond. And my rule with follow-ups is they need to be sent within 24 to 48 hours max. Any more than that, and it doesn't come across like this is actually important or a priority, and it comes more across like they're on an automated cadence and alarm bells start to go off in their head. You want the follow-ups to come frequent. You want to hit them hard, but not for too long. What I recommend is 4 total emails, an initial email and 3 follow-ups within about 8 days. They know you're there at that point. It's a bit of a pattern interrupt. Most people aren't following up that consistently. It feels like you're a real person trying to get in contact with them when you do that. 5, subject lines. A lot of people kill themselves here. Less is more. That's generally my philosophy. I'll link to a video where I go more in depth, but Connor/Dan introduction, or your company, their company, introduction, or it could be a relevant priority to them. You don't want to come across as salesy in your subject line because it will kill your email even if you did everything right in the email. Like, don't miss another dollar of revenue, things like that. Skip out on the salesy, markety subject lines. And then the key to email is putting the quality in place by coiling the spring and making targeted templates for specific personas. Being able to do so at a high volume and consistently is how you become successful over email, and you can get a consistent flow of meetings through email prospecting if you are able to implement these three things. So let me walk you through the template here. We're emailing a fleet manager. I made up a company, something along the lines of, "Hi Dan, my name's Connor Murray and I'm part of the construction team at Fleet Core Solutions. We work with fleet operating teams in the construction space to improve visibility and cut down on manual admin work. Our focus is on priorities related to vehicle tracking, fleet visibility, and driver performance management. Customers use our tools to reduce driver admin time, improve route efficiency, and streamline reporting on driver and vehicle activity through our straightforward tracking system and up-to-date fleet information. I'm looking to set some time for an intro this week to understand your priorities and see if there's a fit. Do you have availability this week? Thanks in advance, Connor." It answers those three questions: who I am very succinctly, why I'm reaching out, which are the priorities that I work on at a high level, the outcomes that we deliver, and then how we do so again at a high level. You don't need to go into too much specifics, and you don't want to because you can pigeonhole yourself if you do that. But this is a repeatable template that you could probably send to just about any fleet manager that works in the construction industry, and it's probably going to be a relevant template for them. And you can continue to tweak and optimize these over time as you get a feel for what messaging is landing with your key personas. And then two, the follow-ups. Here are some specific ones you can plug and play out of the gate. First one, I generally give them the benefit of the doubt, more of a simple nudge, like, "Hey, just want to make sure you saw my email." In this case, just wanted to bump this up in case it got buried in your inbox. Do either of those dates work? You can wait 48 hours for that. Follow-up two, I like to do within 24 hours after that, if I can. And it's just, please give me your thoughts on this. You're showing a little bit of professional dissatisfaction, but you're not being disrespectful. But they see that in their preview and they're like, "Oh, wait, what?" And then they scroll down and they read this email really carefully. And then follow-up three is more a breakup email. If I was sending this in April, I might say something like, "Hey Dan, is May a better time to pick this up? I was hoping to find some time in the next couple weeks, but let me know either way." If you plug and play this will be a very good starting point if you're a new SDR, if you're someone jumping into a new territory. You can come back to this as a guide, but this is how I would get started over cold email. All right, now let's get to cold calling through a framework that I call the value statement framework, which is probably going to be very different than how you've been taught if you've been looking across YouTube or LinkedIn for cold calling advice. It's a much more direct approach to cold calling and takes some key nuances that I think most sales training fails to take into account. So if I had to break it down, and I'll link to a video where I go more in detail on the value statement framework, you have to answer three questions in the first 30 seconds of the call, or you start to lose the prospect and they give you a very defensive tone that's really hard to overcome. And those questions are who you are, why you're calling them, and what you want. Probably sounds familiar because it's the same framework I use over email. When a prospect answers and they realize, "I don't know this person, I wasn't expecting this call, they probably have a meeting in the next few minutes and they don't have time to chit chat," you have to deliver these three things or you'll start to lose them quickly and they'll start to get very defensive. And the way you do that is by taking control of the call at the opening and reducing variance through what I call an assumptive formality. So an assumptive formality is not an exact line, but the key to it is using a downward inflection and an assumptive tone, basically signaling that all I need from you is a formality and then I'm going to get right into why I'm calling. I'm not here to chit chat. Much different than an upward inflecting tone. So it can sound like, "How are you? How have you been?" It can even be permission based. But here's something what it could sound like. "Hey Dan, this is Connor Murray calling from Fleet Core Solutions. Have you been?" Or "How are you?" That will sound a lot different to the prospect than, "Hey Dan, this is Connor Murray calling from Fleet Core Solutions. How are you today?" That one's like, "Oh no, this could take a while. I don't have all day to chit chat." That's the difference between the upward and the downward inflection. It doesn't really matter to me what line you deliver. It could be permission based. The key is just at the opening, we don't want to deal with what I call variance, where if you ask something like, "Hey, do you have 30 seconds for me to tell you why I'm calling?" and you don't say it in the right way, you're already going to be fighting a defensive tone. It's going to give the prospect time for questions to start swirling in their head. They'll say, no, I'm going into a meeting. That's variance. We don't even want them to say much. We just want a, good, how are you? If I say, hey, Dan, this is Connor Murray calling from Fleet Core Solutions. How have you been? Most of the time, if you deliver it the right way, they'll just say, good, how are you? They might sound confused. That's okay, because once they give you that, you're immediately going to take control. And I'm going to show you how in a second. But 3, the key to the framework is using that downward inflection and assumptive tone, not just at the opening, but throughout the cold call itself, as opposed to an upward inflecting tone and, again, passive language. I'll show you the worst example of passive language and where most SDRs make that mistake in a second. 4, when it comes to objection handling, my framework is acknowledge their concern and tell them it makes sense to meet anyway. That's the first line of defense. Again, I'm going to show you an example in a second. 5, this is the key overarching principle, is that you are selling time. You're not selling your entire value proposition. So if you sell fleet management software, you're not trying to convince them to take the meeting on the basis that they're bought into your fleet management system and that they should all of a sudden replace theirs on an off-the-cuff cold call. That's way too monumental of a task. That's why these reps, they feel like they have to run these 10-minute discovery calls on cold calls when that's not your objective. You're selling time. You're selling a meeting, and I'm going to show you here how to do that. So here's an example, same persona as the email, fleet manager. Here's what it would sound like. Start with the assumptive formality. Hey, Dan, this is Connor Murray calling from Fleet Core Solutions. Have you been? Good. Yeah, I'm just reaching out because I'm part of the fleet management team here that works with construction organizations, and we specifically focus on priorities related to vehicle tracking, fleet visibility, and driver performance management, usually by working to reduce a lot of driver admin time and automate manual components of the reporting process on driver and vehicle activity through our tracking system and through our up-to-date fleet database. So I know I kind of called you out of the blue here too, so I was more actually looking to set some time later this week just to get introduced and align with your priorities going forward. How does Thursday or Friday look for you? So we'll break it down. You can pause that, play it back. It probably fell within 30 to 40 seconds. Ideally, I say 30, anywhere in the range of 30 to 45 is okay. And really mid 30s is probably best. If you can do it in 30 to 40 seconds, that's ideal. And it might sound like a lot in your head, but it's really not that long. After 45 seconds, you're pushing it and you might start thinking, are they listening to me? I'm just saying a lot. I promise you, if you're speaking confidently, concisely, you have a downward inflecting assumptive tone and what you're saying is targeted to them because you took the time to coil a spring and a lot of what you're saying is really resonating, then they will listen to what you say. But I answered those 3 questions. First one, who I am. I'm part of the fleet management team because they're a fleet manager that works, in this case, if it was fleet managers that work in construction organizations, I'd say construction. If they worked in manufacturing, I'd say manufacturing. And then I named priorities that I work on that are relevant to them, how we solve them, how at a high level, and the outcomes we delivered, and then went for time on my calendar. This gives me a shot on net of booking the meeting. I front loaded the value. I got out what I wanted to say. Otherwise, this can take 2 to 3 minutes of back and forth and fighting a defensive tone. I would rather get it out up front, establish my credibility, deliver value first. And the beauty too is this is how the call is going to go. When the prospect says hello, you're going to take control with an assumptive formality if you can, and then just get right in to that 30 to 40 second value statement. Now, what if in a lot of cases, they don't take you up on the meeting right away, which is to be expected. Now you just want to be prepared for the most common objections. And again, my process is to acknowledge their concern and tell them it makes sense to meet anyway. So if they say, hey, Connor, thanks for reaching out, but we already have a system in place. We use XYZ fleet management system. I don't think it makes sense to meet. Rather than immediately diving into asking questions about how that system's going for them. Do they have a renewal or any other initiatives coming up? Again, because if I'm going to book this meeting, it's probably not going to be because they decide all of a sudden they should replace their system. Here's what I would do instead. I would say, got it, yeah. And that's actually why I was reaching out. We work with a lot of XYZ customers. So the idea is just for us to get introduced and be a point of contact here moving forward. If there's ever a fit, we can move ahead. But I think it at least makes sense to get aligned for the year, even if it's just 15 minutes, because it'll be my team supporting you in this area for the foreseeable future. And we'll be able to jump in and if and when the timing is right. So that's an example. I acknowledged it, and I remember, sell the time. I doubled down on the meeting. And I also use that downward inflecting assumptive tone, and this is another shot on net. So there are ways to do, you want to be prepared for the most common objections. If I was a new SDR, I'd start with the top 3 to 5 most common objections, get responses I was comfortable with, prepared, and start memorizing them if you can, but honestly, you can have them pulled up if you need, so that when you get that objection, you immediately know what to do from there. And now if they still push back on this, here is where you can start to open up the conversation, because now you've earned the right to do so. That's the key distinction I have, is rather than asking a bunch of questions out of the gate before you've earned it from them, because they don't know who you are, you want to deliver value first, double down and sell the time. Now, if they still push back, one, they're signaling they actually have time to speak with you. And two, because you delivered value first, you've now earned the right to open up the conversation and start asking some questions. And now it's coming from a much stronger frame. And as a reference, out of scope for this video, again, I'll link to one. If they still push back here and they were like, hey, no, I don't think it makes sense to me. We implemented a year ago. Our renewal's not up for another year. So I don't think it makes sense, not the right time. What's happened here is I haven't built quite enough credibility in their eyes yet for them to decide it's worth a 30-minute meeting for me. So my question is going to be designed to continue building credibility for myself. So again, you can pre-prepare these. In this case, I would say something like, got it. Yeah, that makes sense. And when you say your department is using XYZ solution, is that the whole operations department? Or are there other tools in there like A, B, and C, or even spreadsheets? And the reason I ask, that's the key line. And the reason I ask is because a lot of the XYZ customers we work with came to us because there was an opportunity to consolidate and one, save money, but two, get everyone in the department on a common system and a common user interface. And now they'll respond to that. And now you're not just asking what other tools are you using, you're giving them more context and establishing more credibility for yourself, so that when you go for the meeting again, it's a higher probability, another shot on net, that they determine you've done a good enough job selling time. So just to summarize the value statement framework, here it is. In a nutshell, it's designed with the following principles. We're the ones who interrupted their busy day. Therefore, the burden of proof is on us as the cold caller to deliver value first. So we will be taking control of the call and doing most of the talking for the first 30 to 45 seconds. You want to front load the value. This is a key distinction I have with a lot of sales training I see out there, where they teach you to immediately open the call up with questions when you haven't earned the right to do that. We want to succinctly answer 3 questions: who we are, why we're calling them, and what we want. And we're focused on selling time, aka selling the meeting. It's not our responsibility to sell the entire value of our solution on a cold call. So even if you don't totally understand the personas you're calling yet, you have imposter syndrome, you know enough to sell time. If you just know the value proposition at a high level in the persona you're calling to, and you coiled the spring and you're delivering a relevant message, you can position yourself as a valuable resource for them in key business areas that the prospect very likely cares about. A lot of these people have priorities and challenges they need to be working on. They just genuinely don't know who to reach out to, or they struggle to find people and sales reps they actually believe can help them. You're cutting through the noise, you're making yourself available, you're telling them why you're relevant, the priorities you work on, how you solve them, the outcomes you deliver, and you want to get them introduced to your team as a resource going forward. Other goals of the value state framework, it's designed to give you control over the cold call process and for you to be prepared for what to do at every layer of the cold call, where that's not the case when you're just asking open-ended questions, waiting for them to sound interested enough, and then going for the meeting. It's also designed for you to be targeted at scale. That script, you could probably deliver that to just about any fleet manager in construction without knowing the name of the company or what they do. Or you do need to know the name, but you don't need to know anything about their website or do a whole bunch of pre-call prep in between cold calls. One value statement should work for a large list of leads. It's also designed to take key nuances of cold calling into account, like I was mentioning, that we're generally interrupting a busy working professional. They probably have a meeting they're going into, and they don't have time for a 10-minute chit chat on the phone, but they would take a meeting with you if you just get to your point quickly and deliver value. And then lastly, it's designed to give you multiple shots on net. You go for the meeting right away. When they give you an objection, you double down and sell the time. When they still object, you build a little more credibility and then go for the meeting again. You want to give yourself as many high quality probabilities of booking the meeting as possible on these cold calls. Now, once you have all of this in place, you've coiled the spring, you have templates you feel good about, you know what follow-ups you're going to use, you have cold call scripts. Now it's about getting this messaging in the hands of as many relevant personas as possible. And the key to doing that is a daily process. And what your daily process does not need to be and should not be is complex. You want to keep it simple. Complexity doesn't drive results, clarity and focus do. Again, sticking with the work or the gym analogy, I compare it if you brought someone who's brand new to the gym, maybe on paper there's a specific workout routine that involves like 10 exercises or more and 2-a-day splits that would be the best routine for them. But is it? Because they're probably not going to stick with it or be able to keep up with it. A simple workout routine with like 3 or 4 exercises per day or whatever it is that's easy to implement, push-ups, sit-ups, squats, bench, is probably better because they'll actually stick with it. Same thing with daily processes. I see a lot of cadences out there where it's way too complex. There's like 15 touch points. It's like call day 1, but don't leave a voicemail. Then send a LinkedIn request, but don't leave a message. Do that the 3rd day. Then call and leave another voicemail the 4th day. Then email. And it's like, how do you keep up with all of that at scale? Quality plus volume plus consistency is what matters most for both emailing and cold calling. And you want your process to be muscle memory. You can run it without even thinking. You wake up, no matter how you're feeling that day, it's a long weekend, whatever, you know how to sit down, even if your brain is half working, and you just physically know what to do. I'm going to show you what schedule I use in a second. The importance of a daily process, so you need a built-in structure for yourself because it eliminates guesswork. I was referring to this earlier. A killer for SDRs is when they wake up not knowing what to do, as opposed to having a clear plan and know what they're going to be doing today. They have their list ready. They have the messaging they're going to use for both emails and calls ready, and they simply need to implement it. They don't need to think about any of that stuff. Benchmarking, it gives you your results context and consistent metrics to measure progress. If you don't have a consistent process you follow, it's hard to know why or why not you're doing well. It could be factors that you didn't even take into account. A consistent daily process helps you benchmark your results. And then 3, it gamifies the role. Once you get a process down, it kind of turns outreach into a game and is what it takes you from feeling anxious about the job to looking forward to it because you know when you're on pace to hit your targets. It's all averages, there's no guarantees, but you can generally start to figure out when you've made enough emails and when you've made enough calls to know that you're probably have done enough to hit your targets for that day, week, month, etc. And then 4, slept on, is internal credibility. Your process is something you can speak to, especially in cases if your results aren't there, they start to dip. At least you can point to a process that you've been following and probably reviewing with your manager. On the flip side, when it comes to getting promoted, the number one thing account executive managers will ask you is to tell them about your process. So that's why it's important to have a daily process in place that you're building and optimizing over time. Here's what that can look like. I said simple is better, and I meant it. So this is a real example of what your calendar can look like. Obviously, every day is not going to look like this. Things come up, but this is the general structure you can follow that's easy and effective. I call it the AB email plus call cadence, and essentially it's what it sounds like. You pick a list on Monday, 2 different lists that you've already coiled, so these are ready to go. 1 you're going to email and 1 you're going to call. So you're going to email group A, that could be fleet managers in construction, it could be fleet operations managers in construction or manufacturer, whatever you pick. It can be a combination, but that's who you're going to email Monday, and then you're going to call a different group on Tuesday. The breakdown of why it's scheduled this way is I just prefer to email in the morning. I'm not ready to make cold calls right out of the gate. That's just a personal preference. You could flip the order, but I like to email the first hour and a half of the day, and then I like to do 2 split call blocks if I can, 1 late morning and 1 towards the end of the day. In the late morning, I'll try and call West Coast accounts because it's early morning for them. The answer rates are higher, and I'll call East Coast in the afternoon because it's the end of the day, again, out of meetings. Answer rates are higher, but we don't need to get into that. What we do need to get into is basically it's A, B. Let's look at group A for a second. They're getting an email Monday, and then they're getting a call Tuesday, email Wednesday, call Thursday, email Friday, and so on. You can see it here. Email, call in the yellow. Same thing with the green, or the group B. They get a call, the order is just flipped. Call Monday, email Tuesday, call Wednesday, first follow-up Thursday, call Friday, etc. I like this because it's super easy to implement, super easy to keep track of, every day, how you can start is you go into your sent box, you scroll down to the messages you sent 2 days ago, and then you send the next follow-up in line. So using the examples earlier, if you see just wanted to bump this up for all those emails where you sent that, you're now going to take that please give me your thoughts and just send it to all of them. It's an easy way to get a large amount of emails out the door, and you've done so at a high quality. It's super easy to keep track of. Also, this was a screenshot from Christmas time, so I don't recommend prospecting on Christmas, but you get the point. It's something consistent, easy to implement, easy to keep track of, and it works. So lastly, we'll get into how you can get the most out of your sales tools in order to implement this schedule. So I touched on this earlier. The core capabilities and sales tools you need, again, accurate B2B database, ability to filter those leads, and then ability to add them to lists and contact them via the phone. One I will add that I think is becoming an absolute necessity is AI assistant, namely something like ChatGPT Plus or Enterprise if your company pays for it. If they don't, ChatGPT Plus, best $20 you'll spend per month. I wasn't always in on the AI tools initially, but the models have gotten really good and they save you a ton of time doing all of this if you know how to use them the right way. The sales tools that are nice to have, but in order to implement everything I've covered in this video, you don't need these tools. You only need what's up above. But the ones that are nice to have are call recording tools like Gong or Chorus, which is owned by ZoomInfo. Or if you don't have those, just use your voice memos app in order to record yourself making cold calls. That's how you can hear like, oh, I need to improve that tone, or oh, I used an upward inflecting tone, or I was too long there, I was dragging on, I didn't sound confident. You're going to hate the way you sound, but it's totally necessary. Two is sequencing and outreach tools, things like Outreach or Sales Loft. These are good for automations. I don't think you need to automate. You can if you want, but they also keep track of things like open rates, reply rates, things like that, subject lines, A/B testing. You can do things like that. And then one I'm coming around to, I still don't use them, but are power dialers. They can really save you a lot of time. They're better than parallel dialers from what I've heard, where there's like an awkward pause, but power dialers, Apollo.io has one. There's other ones like Nooks, Orem, Phone Burner. You can look up some options that are affordable, especially if your company's not covering it. But these can save you a lot of time listening to rings and voicemails, and will make sure you're actually speaking to as many possible people as you can within a day that are relevant personas with a relevant message. And then three, this is your opportunity, especially if you're new. This is your grace period to just kind of focus on getting fluent with these tools. When you first start out, everything's going to feel clunky. It's going to feel hard. Every process is going to require a lot of mental effort. You want to move past that as quickly as possible and aim for muscle memory. So yeah, like I said, it'll feel clunky at first, but mastering these tools will make everything easier down the line. So look up tutorials, see how your peers are using them as well, because if this becomes second nature, it just makes everything else I've talked about, coiling the spring, that much easier and that much more effective when you actually implement it. So if you want more of this, check out the links in the pinned comment and description below to the cold call mastery community. I run weekly live calls in there where we touch on everything I just shared in this video in a lot more detail and more specific to your situation. So hope to see you in there. And with that, thank you for being a part of this video. Subscribe, hit the like button if you got value, and I will see you all on the next one.